Sophia sat on a short cliff edge, her feet dangling over and nearly touching the rocky ground below, as she looked out at the tiny dot that was the sun on the horizon through her faceplate. She glanced down and ran her fingers through the sandy soil that covered the small planet on which a number of clans had made their home centuries ago. Arwen was part of the Elvish cluster, in high orbit around Sol, though that grouping was more nostalgic now than geographic, given that their differing orbital tracks had slowly pulled them out of relative position to one another. With the navigational advancements over the years, it hadn't mattered. Everywhere in the Sol system was easily accessible. No longer the huge distances that separated civilization from the frontier, though, in truth, the remoteness stayed the same, and it was the growth of the empire that had made everything feel so small and nearby. That was why she was here now, outside the colonies that dotted the landscape and sitting in an envirosuit on the natural surface, feeling the low gravity along with the sense of just how empty everything was. Inside the cities, everyone was close, friendly, and working together for the benefit of Clan Snowstorm. But out here, it was still empty space, with the nearest planet being beyond her reach. It was like the technology had given everyone a false sense of security. For Arwen was an inhospitable landscape, despite the addition of a carbon dioxide atmosphere that Starforce had introduced to bring the freezing temperatures up to only slightly chilly. They were so far away from the star that little light reached this far out, and the planet was so small that it didn't have sufficient internal heat production to do much of anything with. Sophia was sitting on top of a giant frozen rock, orbiting a hot star so far out that it looked benign to her, sitting just above the horizon, soon to dip below it and usher in the nighttime sky. The ground around her was a mix of boulders and sand, most of which was colored gray with hints of red, and looked, for all the world, like one of the last places anyone would like to live. But to her it had always been home. Funny, though, because she'd rarely been outdoors to see the planet itself. She'd lived her entire life inside the colonies, having gone outside only during her Maturia training some 140 years ago. She never even visited the other 4 clans' colonies on the planet, staying within Snowstorm's holdings and never feeling the need to venture elsewhere, for there was always plenty to do right here. But that was all about to change. Sophia was about to leave Arwen, along with the rest of her clan. Well, technically it was her choice of whether or not to go. The fact that all the Snowstorms were leaving the solar system left her with no real options. A few would remain on their clan's piece of Antarctica, but every other territory slot and orbital station they possessed here was being traded away to other clans in exchange for resources, agreements, or whatever other deals Oni had worked out. Sophia might be a civilian tech, but she wasn't sure about the wisdom of the Trailblazer this time. Everything they had built up here in Sol was going to be wiped out in a single trade, including her home. She'd been born on Arwen, gone through her Maturia training here, and had lived amongst the other 3.2 million snowstorms on the planet her entire life. And while it was true she'd only seen the interior of a colony city that entire time, this lump of rock she was now directly sitting on still struck her as home, no matter how lifeless and empty it looked right at the moment. She knew she wasn't the only one in this position, for everyone else in the clan was having to make the same move, all the way out to the B-Sid region. Apparently, Oni had decided to uproot the entire clan for the chance of colonizing an entire system of their own.